Welcome to another Workshop Wednesday brought to you by School of Bookkeeping. I'm here with, my name's Dan DeLong. I'm here with Carrie, Kahn. We're also being joined by Justin Smith, who's playing the part of Carlos Whiteman today. Because we are continuing our series of digitizing your back office. So we're joined by our friends over at Corpay One, and we're unpacking about automating bill payments. And so, Justin, want to introduce yourself and let us know what your role is over at Corpay One?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I will try and be as energetic as Carlos was last week. Big shoes to fill. So hi, everybody. I'm Justin Smith. I lead our sales and customer success teams at Corpay One. So really what that means is, we and our team evangelize the product, but also work with our customers through their first, 3 to 12 months. So we're not just sales. We are your implementation team as well. So we get to stand by the product throughout the usage. So I really love how we've set that up. But yeah, a little bit about me. I've worked for Corpay One, the parent company of Corpay One, for about 5 years, and had the absolute pleasure of really being a part of our journey to help small businesses, modernize and bring efficiency to their back office for like 5 years. So my entire time with this company has helped small to medium-sized businesses, effectively what we'll talk about today, automate a lot of parts of their back office. And I can't wait to tell you a little bit more about what that means and how we do it.
Now, for those of us, those folks that maybe didn't catch last week, we kind of set Carlos from Corpay One and helped us kind of set the stage of, digitizing your back office. And as we left off there, we were talking about the technology that's available for helping people do that when they're trying to manage they're digitizing their back office for expense management and we were talking about OCR, where it's the technology that allows you to take a picture of something, and then that turns into data that you can then manipulate. So other than that, like Justin, what other, is that like the core technology? Are there other things that help you automate bill payments? Because in theory, you can now, with that technology, you can either have a scan of your document, take a picture of the document, forward it from an email. What other things can you do with that technology now that what more efficiencies can come with that?
Yeah, awesome question. So, and I might even maybe zoom out and just sort of tell the story of like the current customers that we, as we meet with them for the first time, just like give this audience a good overview of what we hear from our customers as the current state. Because we can talk a lot more about documents and other things, but I think it's helpful to start with where are things at today.
I'm the tech guy, so I want to know all the
oh yeah,
I want to dive right into the weeds where Carrie's like, what problem am I solving here?
Yeah, because and I think the problems that a lot of these businesses are facing are super common and one that we can all understand from our own jobs and our own lives. But a lot of times it all falls down to, hey, we have a finite amount of time we want to put into work over a week, whether that be 40, 60, 80, or 100 hours, right? And time management is one of the most critical skills of business leaders today. So, and in my life and on our teams, we see it too. And the most important thing to get right is time management. Because for us, there's so many things that we could be doing to grow our business, help our customers, inform product, all these things. you have to be really diligent about where you spend your time. And so particularly in like back office and finance teams, what we've seen is, there's still a lot of like owner operators, CEOs, folks wearing multiple hats. And so back office finance teams aren't just like dedicated resources, right? It's like, hey, I'm trying to like grow a business, foster a good employee culture, and manage my back office tasks all at once. So you just got so many categories of things to try and balance. And luckily, we're in 2023, technology and software has come a long way. My particular point of view is that like accounts payable has really been a late bloomer in some of these software solutions that help you, right? Think about all of the tools we all now have to manage revenue, particularly like receivables, digital marketing, CRM tools. Like those are decades old categories of SaaS. On the accounts payable side, kind of newer. And so when we talk to customers, right, we hear all the time what sounds like it could be in the 90s or it could be in 2023. It's like, oh, interesting.
Well, Carrie just was the recipient of that. She just got mailed a check.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and hey, listen, like there's $25 trillion that pass back and forth in B2B, in the B2B economy every year. And like 40% of that is through paper checks, right? Like it's massive. And the average payment volume on a check is, I think 2,500 to $5,000. Like that's kind of the average. And so just do the math, like tens of millions of checks.
Let's pause there because I want to unpack why is it still that way for
still that high?
People? Like why do people still have these antiquated things, and why haven't they ventured into the 21st century when it comes to those things? Why are things so antiquated? Like getting sent a check. And I think we talked about that last week where it showed up in my registered agent, address, which then I had to pay a fee to get that check mailed to me so I could deposit it.
Oh yeah. And I couldn't even begin to unpack like the US payment system on this one, but I think a lot of it falls down to, honestly, kind of the manual nature of AP in general. So kind of like to the, back to the current state, what we hear is like, hey, I'm a business owner, right? I'm a little bit above, micro business. I'm kind of like a couple years in, I might have a couple $1 million in revenue. Their AP processes all kind of sound like this. Hey, I've got like 100 different vendors that I pay over the course of a year, probably like 50 to 100 payments I'm managing to some subset of those 100 vendors every month. And as we deconstruct, like, okay, well, how do you do that? Right? There is an element of one, just cat herding invoices, right? I'm now no longer just the person who gets invoices in the business. There's multiple people, right? And so you've got a cat herding exercise to get all the PDFs and in your inboxes, and even the paper invoices that still show up to job sites or receiving docs. Like there are plenty of pieces of paper that aren't digital. So it's like, okay, got it. So we're cat herding 50 to 100 invoices. Fantastic. We tend to talk with folks who love to keep good books. So, hey, like in an accrual accounting environment, I kind of want to know when we have an invoice so I can log some entries and know my effectively my payables. And so, hey, I'm trying to get those things in as quickly as possible, but I'm manually kind of entering these things into QuickBooks. A lot of times, and that's just to recognize the expense, not exactly the payment yet. Then we're doing like some approvals, right? Because maybe Carrie is the CEO and she's got some approval rules saying, hey, anything over 10 grand, I'm still your treasurer. I'm the treasurer. I
want to make sure I know where that goes. Yeah, Bob on Facebook, this is the reason why they have paper checks. So the old man has to sign anything.
Oh, I have lost so many deals to that pesky old man just not wanting to modernize. You have no idea, particularly in the construction department. I lose like a deal or two a week because some old curmudgeon owner just doesn't want to give up his checkbook. But yeah, so thanks for that reminder. I'm waiting for new generations to take the wheel. But no, so
waiting for the sons to take over.
Waiting for them to die off.
That's right. And so, hey, so there's a lot of cat herding the invoices. There's a lot of manual approvals through like email and pre-COVID, just literally like walking things down the hallway. And then we've got what I'll call like the coding, right? We're assigning these expenses into their appropriate GL account, assigning them departments and jobs and all this stuff. Like they're doing that manually. And then, heaven forbid we get to the actual payment at some point. There are a lot of checks, right? There are a lot of manual checks, particularly in a lot of industries too, where like take a nonprofit where they have to have 2 signatures for like processing purposes. Like literally one time a week, people are coming into an office to make the check signatures. And it's like, oh, that's brutal.
Efficient.
Yeah. And so then there's sort of like, okay, the odd, like foreign exchange payments, a totally new thing. Like I've just got weird flavors that happen every so often. And then ultimately, like sometimes vendors have questions, right? Hey, like vendors aren't really notified when I put a check in the mail myself. So I'm kind of manually back and forth with vendors, or somebody in my team does. So that's it. When we hear that, we love to just sort of like start to say, hey, would you be interested in some efficiency gains in some of these processes? And we use the term automation. Like I think the whole like episode here is called automating bill pay. And so we start to bring up the concept of, well, like, hey, there's a concept of automation that we can help you think through. And a lot of times people will go into 2 camps. One is sort of the tech forward person who loves that concept. And the other one is that immediately kind of puts me back into like a fight or flight mode. And I don't like it. And so for us, when we're evangelizing solutions like automating bill pay, we quickly get into like having to deconstruct it into like, well, let me be more specific. Like, and thematically, what I paint is, hey, in accounts payable, we find there are just a lot of routines, things that happen the same way every time. And I'm going to categorize those as like administrative tasks. And then there are what I'd call like strategic elements of accounts payable, right? Like cash flow management, and even compliance things like, am I paying somebody before I have like a W-9 on file? Like there's all sorts of categories, but I quickly dive into, hey, there is a world of improvement on the administrative task side. And so this is where we start to paint that picture. So Dan, back to your piece, like in the upfront part of it, what can we do? So first is we can help on, there are processes that can help on cat herding those invoices, right? So a lot of accounts payables groups have effectively a finance@company.com. You kind of already got an inbox. If you have things that need to get paid, to send it here, and humans manage that inbox. So there are equivalent technologies which we use, which would be like, hey, here's a Corpay One email. So forward, like just add this in the CC line, forward it to us. All right, it'll come into the platform. I'll circle back to this on the layers of automation. You can actually give that to vendors too. So that would be like level 2, like give your vendors a way to get their invoices into a platform. Okay, so now that we've done that, and oh, by the way, the paper invoices, there's an iOS app we can take pictures, right? So I think we've hit kind of where Carlos was leaving off. Once things are in the system, we have a scanning tool called OCR, machine learning. We're going to use all the buzzwords, but effectively, technology takes all the important information off of that document for you. And what that does is that unlocks an entire world of automation capabilities. So
now at that point in the conversation, when you're talking to somebody, do you equate that to the amount of time that that would save, or that equates to removing off of their plate.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the like journey of automation, I usually talk in the hours of time saved, or the the duration of time it takes to close your books, right? You kind of talk about time-based value. And so, yeah, on the scanning piece, it's twofold, right? Like, one, you're not literally having to remind yourself to like email all employees to send me your invoices by a certain date. And a lot of times I'm not actually like typing in things into QuickBooks to manually log expenses. And two, it helps with folks who really appreciate real-time views into their books. So a lot of times what I found is like, all right, it's a month-end process. I'm going to remind everybody at the end of the month. So people who've been hanging on to invoices that haven't given them to me, I'm going to get them on like the 28th, versus setting up processes where they just kind of come in the day we get them, and my books are more accurate in real time. Sometimes the second part of that really resonates with customers too. But no, so once we take the information off of the invoice, right? We know the vendor, we know the due date, the issue date, the amount, and the effectively like where the money needs to go. We can start to talk about automating those administrative processes. So the first, what I do is like the bookkeeping entries into QuickBooks, right? That is one that we can program like, hey, do you want us to go ahead and log this expense, like this payable, underneath the vendor in your QuickBooks for you? That is an aha moment. It's like, yes, I kind of need to see it before I trust it.
Hello.
That sounds great. And so that's like, yeah, that sounds great. And then two, we have the approvals process. Very rarely do we run into companies that don't either have or aspire to have better approvals processes. And so it's like, okay, hey, there's probably good routines, right? Like there's a department, let's call it the marketing department. There's a head of marketing, and of your 100 vendors, these 20 are marketing vendors. So you would really like that marketing leader to be an approval in the process. Is this the right amount? Is it an approved payable, blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of want somebody either in management or in treasury to say like, yes, if over a certain amount, I kind of need Carrie to see it, or, so on and so forth. So it's like, well, hey, would you like us to be able to set up rules that engineer that happens every time? And so folks are like, well, yes, because a lot of the questions are around like, well, that's your aspiration. Do you think it actually happens in the real world? And it's like, well, we're all humans, right? So it's like, well, would it be helpful if you actually had technology that was engineered to do that every time? And then the second is like, hey, there's a lot of routines that we feel like we hear all the time, which is every time we get an invoice from this vendor, it always gets the same coding, right? It's always programmed to this, this category in QuickBooks always goes to this department. Would it be interesting if we could say, hey, that's a rule? Like we just say, hey, for every time we get a vendor of this name, it always goes to this category and gets this approval flow and goes to this department. And this is where we start to get into, well, if it's always yes, great. That sounds like automation's a good tool. If it's, well, sometimes I'm now a little bit more amber light. Well, we'll have to go deeper to see if automation's a good tool here or not. And then, what I'd say is like, okay, so we've got capability to get things in, scanned, approved, coded, book kept. We still got the payment. So a lot of times folks are looking for solutions to not effectively manage paper checks anymore, or not managing ACH tools and not managing foreign exchange tools and all these other things. They're looking for something that's a little less burdensome. And so we can take that off of the plate too. So there's a lot of technology that says, hey, you approve the payment and we'll send the check for you. We'll notify the vendor with payment tracking, and you'll know all the payment tracking as well. So you're in the loop, but you're no longer like actually managing, listen to this, check printers. It's like, whoa. Hear that all the time, unfortunately. And so for us, we find that automation can save like hundreds and hundreds of hours of administrative time. And so what we do is like, anytime we like entertain this topic, it's a solution oriented conversation, not a transactional conversation. We're like, here's our tool, figure it out. Let me know if you have questions. Not that is not a good one. It's more like, hey, let's be your sort of like mountain guides here to say, hey, we understand what you've got, and here's where automation is good. Here's where we should have a separate conversation around it if it's good or not.
So you're the Sherpa of expense management.
That's what I aspire to be.
There you go. You just need to put that funny hat on and some snowshoes, and you'll be able to hike the Himalayas of accounts payable.
That's right. And what we kind of say is like, you kind of move from a role of like doing lots of manual things into more of like a system architect. Like, folks who are managing AP or users of our process, like you actually kind of take a new role, which is like, hey, I'm kind of a system architect and monitor versus a just doer. And so for like the CEO who's managing lots of things, or like, the executive leader who's managing lots of things, that's a more comfortable role for them to focus on more strategically important things.
Carrie, you've been sitting absorbing all of the things that Justin's been saying. How does that resonate with you as you're kind of filtering it through? Okay, this is all the time that I've been spending on this.
Well, yeah, we know about my manual processes, but one of the things that kind of resonated with me, even growing up, I remember my mom just doing her household bills, sitting in the corner in a bad mood, writing out her checks, and she never paid anything early. It was always on time. She knew the value of her money. And what I love about these tools is that you can purposely make sure that they get the money on time, and you're not worried about the check is in the mail and some sort of, breakdown. And you see the video on the news of the post office that dumped over into the creek. And then you have to call the credit card company to say, the check was in the mail when it wasn't. I think that technology, like you say, as long as you have the data in there, no, we don't care about that. We want to know the philosophy behind that's being done automatically. That's the part, sitting there thinking, seeing my mom, carefully making sure she's not sending it before the 15th or whatever it is. All that's done for you. Now, she still hands me a check though. And
yeah,
I'm like, Mom, there's many ways to do that differently, but it's just like I was saying, who are these 40% of the people? My mom.
right.
Who, when they ran their own business, she did all the bills and held the checks, and they carefully mailed them at the right time.
What this kind of how this kind of circles back, and what's coming up for me is like there's the old adage of the Stephen Covey, urgent and important, that you put things in that grid of what's urgent and important. But I think what I heard someone else talk to, like, there's a third dimension to that it's not just urgent, it's not just important, but it's significance. Because what Justin was talking about with, we have a finite amount of time, and if you can actually do something that's urgently important and significant that provides you with more time later, like basically you're crafting more time in your day later, as Carlos was talking last time, that Saturday afternoon of, sitting down, collecting his receipts and sending them to the accountant. There was some automated tools that were in there, as far as technology was concerned, but you would have to do that every week. There's a piece of time that there is, needing to be invested in order to do some of these tasks. And what Justin's saying about, we can automate this all the way through that process. What does that ultimately turn into? Either you're going to have a person doing that, somebody else, you're leveraging, a person to do these tasks, or you're leveraging technology to do these tasks, and then you're just the manager of the data as opposed to the initiator, I guess is the best best way to describe it. So, you're creating more people, right? Or more time in the day or whatever it is that, and what that turns into. And then now that person is, free, free to do something else that may be more significant to their business as opposed to a rote task of signing and dating a check and stuffing it in an envelope.
Yeah, that's right. And, so I think Carrie, you mentioned a good one too, where, the value of technology here is a cash flow one, right? I see so many current customers too, like their process is, hey, every Friday I'm going to pull an AP aging report and I'm going to go like do a check run. And out of pure ease of process, they're going to pay things early. Like I'm going to like send my payments now, regardless of if that is optimized for arriving by the due date. And so we help a lot of customers think through, well, like, hey, unless you're on a lot of early discount terms with your vendors, right? If you're doing anything like that, you're just sacrificing cash flow, right? Would it be helpful to automate payment timing to just arrive by the due date, right? Would that just take a lot of your, bi-weekly or weekly process of creating the aging report and manually picking which things to go pay? Like, would you also like some help there? And so we see, like over time, folks retire that old process and effectively just focus on setting up the right rules and approving payments, right? It all comes down to an approval unlocks money leaving. So all you have to do is approve. And then everything else from there is really procedural.
Which is so nice to have that part automated, versus my mom at the table in a bad mood.
That's right. That's right.
Don't want mom in a bad mood. Yeah.
Especially tax. You didn't want to be around her during bills and tax season. Whoa.
Double whammy.
That's right.
You ran far.
Well, and Dan, just for the audience's awareness, right? It doesn't really stop at AP. Like when I say AP, I'm thinking the very traditional invoice and payment cycle, right? A lot of companies spend still happens at a point of sale, like with a corporate card device. And, think about all the administrative tasks there, like cat herding receipts from employees, is one that we hear all the time. But, one of the things that we can sort of say, like, yes, that is one, and human behavior is still a linchpin in that. Like somebody's still got to take a picture of a receipt in 2023. But it helps to have some automated triggers where like, well, wouldn't you like their like phone to ping when they swipe their card? So like you can maximize the chances that they take a picture. Or would you like to set some controls up front where that card will even work or not? Right. We hear so many times, like, I don't really want to give a corporate card to a new employee because I don't trust them yet. Right. So I kind of create a whole lot of work of them paying for things on their own dime, submitting an expense report, it getting reviewed, them getting reimbursed. So there's a whole world of corporate card technology too that can help with those administrative tasks. And so I'd encourage your audience to just like research the category of spend management. There's a whole lot of investment that folks are putting in to help accountants and owners alike to, I guess, get out of the administrative burden and into the more strategic elements of managing their businesses.
So, and what I'm hearing from the Corpay solution side is that all of that is something that can be managed in the Corpay dashboard, so to speak, is it within all of that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we, without being too much of a Corpay One commercial, which I am at risk of doing, we really try and be a one-stop shop, all-in-one platform for accountants and their clients, and like for me in a direct channel, like an actual business, to manage all of their non what I'll call non-payroll expense. So all of their AP and corporate card spend, we have a really feature-rich but also approachable solution for folks to capture all of their payments, set up all the right workflows, get all the automation going, and facilitate all these payments. So yeah, it's a really amazing tool that I have the privilege of being able to sell and represent. We're really excited by just providing this as an option for folks to take advantage of.
All right, and so just to button up the Corpay soft commercial here, if you do want a demo with the Corpay individual, I did put in the comments there. Our friend Eric, who is actually going to come on next week to talk about working with an accountant as part of automating and digitizing your back office. So we'll get to meet him next week, playing the part of Justin and then Carlos. So, so if you do want to find out more about Corpay and the platform itself, book a demo there with Eric as well. And for those people that are watching that are complete business group partners, we have made some enhancements to the landing page where you can opt into some of the bill pay options when ordering QuickBooks Online as well. So check those out. And I appreciate you, Justin, joining us here today and kind of unpacking another way to digitize your back office. In this case, it's through the automating the bill payments process. And then hopefully you can folks watching can join us next week where we take that to how do you work with an accountant with all of the automating bill payments process. Maybe the accountant is managing some of these bill payment functions. Carrie, any closing thoughts from you?
I was just thinking to myself how nice it is to see this technology coming around. I mean, like you said, we've had the way we could do e-invoicing and collecting payments and doing things faster where we don't have to go to the bank. We love that part, but we do have to manage our bills, and you don't want to be bogged down into the minutia of all that. So, and not every product has exactly what you need, and they're all evolving. So it is something you want to make sure hits all the check boxes you have, or maybe coming soon because maybe they don't have them. Like I'm still asking for some stuff because I'm very unique, but it's definitely worth adopting something so that you can save some time.
All right. Well, Justin, any final thoughts from you?
No, thank you so much for having me and the rest of us here. We're excited to just sort of evangelize the technology and see if it's, effectively what I've learned is even with words in 30 minutes, it's hard to kind of grasp. Like you kind of got to see it. That's what I've learned in my role is like, this is like a QVC product. Like I can't talk about it. I can show it to you, right? Yes, it all comes to life once I show it to you. And so if you're at all interested, or even just like, even if you're skeptical, right? Like I would say, just take 15 minutes so we can show you and make it a little bit more real. That's the best way to educate yourself on this product category. There are not enough words and not enough time that we would spend together that I could portray what I could in like 10 to 15 minutes.
What you're saying there takes me back to one of my first jobs out of college was working for a water treatment company, and where they would sell you your water treatment systems for your home. The president founder, he had this saying and he had this deep raspy voice. He's like, "There's no way I could tell it to you right, but no way I could show it to you wrong." And it just resonated. Took me back, I
love it. Well,
so we shall see you. We shall see you next week on another Workshop Wednesday. We appreciate you joining us here. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to be alerted to the upcoming workshops, just go ahead and subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit notify, and then you'll be notified when we go live. So I appreciate you joining us again, and we'll see you next week on the workshop.
Have a great week, and thanks for joining. And thank you for joining us, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely.